There is a tremendous opportunity for us to have a solid relationship between our two countries, beginning with agriculture.
In a historic trip, the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack and the Agriculture Minister of Cuba, Gustavo Rollero, was in Iowa as part of a delegation last Friday. Good morning, this is the Agribusiness Report. I'm David Geiger. It's the third official visit from Cuba, the third meeting between agriculture secretaries, and the first visit to Iowa by a Cuban official since July of 2004. Then it was to open up the red meat industry. The Cuban delegation toured 4 agricultural locations in central Iowa, and I was there with them. In the first stop of the day, Secretary Vilsack and Minister Rollero met at the DuPont Pioneer facility in Johnston, Iowa. There they toured the Mendel Automated Greenhouse. Minister Rollero spoke with the DuPont Pioneer president, Paul Schlickler, about the history of the company, how their seeds are used today, and what the future looks like, and asked about on-farm trials and Pioneer test plots. Now, I wasn't allowed to film inside the facility because of intellectual property security, but both heads of agriculture saw conveyor belts moving half-grown potted corn plants around in a greenhouse and controlled environment, automatically measuring and taking pictures of the plants. The delegation then moved to an organic farm in Polk City.
It was obvious from our conversation that farming is a constant learning process. We're consistently evolving on our farm, and I think on every farm in Iowa.
On an organic farm in central Iowa, the Cuban Minister of Agriculture, Gustavo Rollero, spoke to a local farmer and USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack about U.S. farming. The heads of agriculture talked about the premiums of organic agriculture and how encouraging that could be beneficial to Cuba and the U.S. Secretary Vilsack says there's a lot Cuba can do. Back in 2015, he visited a Cuban organic farm.
There is so much common between us in agriculture. A belief in science. A concern about small farmers. Sustainable production. Renewable energy.
Minister Rollero looks at the science as well. Earlier this year, he and Vilsack signed a memorandum of understanding, and many of the agreements in there had a focus on science and technology. Enforcing that, the Cuban visit included a trip to DuPont Pioneer, Iowa State University, and an ethanol facility.
No puede haber un país como el nuestro que ha emprendido una proyección de desarrollo.
A country like ours, which has committed itself to developing and to growing its agricultural development, cannot do so without taking into account scientific advances and the contributions of technology and science to agriculture.
Good morning, this is the Agribusiness Report. I'm David Geiger. In a historic delegation to Iowa by the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture and the Cuban Minister of Agriculture, science and technology were big topics, and it started out on a local level.
The questions the minister asked could have easily been asked by me to his farmers. It is universal. That's why we entered into a memorandum of understanding.
After spending half a day at a DuPont Pioneer automated greenhouse and an organic farm, the Cuban delegation headed to Iowa State University, to the Seed Science Building. The Cuban Ag Minister says you can't have agriculture development without advancing technology and science, which is agreed on by the memorandum.
En primer lugar, muy importante el tema de la semilla y los recursos fitogenéticos.
First and most important is the issue of seeds and phytogenetic resources. This is the basis for the development of agriculture. There won't ever be a farmer who can improve his production if he doesn't improve his seeds.
At Iowa State, the delegation talked about research and how that looks from the Department of Agriculture's perspective. Rollero talked about the importance of teaching future leaders and asked how Iowa State does that. The group then participated in a farmer roundtable.
Hemos decidido cooperar también.
We've decided as well to cooperate in the area of technological assistance and exchanges and science.
To look at value-added agriculture by technology, the Cuban delegation headed to its final stop in Iowa, the Lincoln Way Energy Facility in Story County. Vilsack says without ethanol, seed companies wouldn't want to make better corn. He says ethanol stabilizes corn prices, exports, reduces dependence on foreign oil, and has beneficial byproducts. The ethanol facility leaders say biofuel could be made with any plant, which Rollero could look into.
It emphasizes the diversity of opportunity that agriculture presents, and I think it will give him an opportunity to figure out ways in which we can more closely interact in the future.
Close interactions may still take a while. The trade embargo with Cuba is still ongoing, despite multiple visits by leaders to both countries. Vilsack is optimistic Congress will normalize relations.
Sincerely hope that at some point in time in the near future, Congress sees the wisdom of ending the embargo, allowing us to have an even closer relationship.